November 9th, 2024. Well, I'm going to get away from my primary discussion of the election like I've had for the last several videos because we're kind of wrapping that up now and get back to another interesting issue that's been developing during the time when we've been focused on the election. If you look at the situation over in Ukraine and the Middle East, the international situation is still quite interesting to say the least. During that time, particularly, the Russians have been launching a series of offensives and have been gaining ground all around the front line in the Ukraine war, and they've took the Volodar fortress, and then since that time, that's allowed them to move north in some of the southern regions of Donetsk. Also, they're still creeping forward in the central region, although they're still not taken Pokrovsk yet, but I believe they've been able to bring it under bombardment. So it's a serious development. And in the northern area, they've actually reached the river and cut the northern area in two pieces, the northern piece and the southern piece of that area by the river there. So that's been an ongoing Russian advance, let's put it that way. There's one area where they've had a real fit and recently launched a major attack and were repulsed, however, by the Ukrainians, and that sort of so and I'm just saying, the Russians have not been successful everywhere, but in most of the places they have been, and what's interesting is they've not yet been able to expel the Ukrainians from Kursk, although right at this time, the last couple of days, the Russians have launched a major offensive, and the consequences of that are still unclear. It looks like both sides are claiming that the other side is suffering greatly, so we'll have to wait a little bit on how that turns out. And of course, there are the entry of the North Koreans and the defense treaty between North Korea and Russia. So since these Ukrainians are actually on the sovereign territory of Russia that even the international community would recognize, the Ukrainians are, excuse me, and the Koreans are there on a defensive mode, I guess they can do that now, and I guess it's more troops for the battle, so to speak. Maybe North Korea also just wants to get some actual modern combat experience because their army hasn't really fought since 1953. So if they ever plan on doing something, that might not be too good for them. So at any rate, so that's kind of summarizes a lot of what's happening there. It seems like the drone wars continue on both sides, and it seems like neither side can really stop the other side's drones from going into their territory. Both Russia's being hit hither and twither from with Ukrainian drone attacks, and Russian drones are flying merrily over Kyiv. So it seems like that part of the conflict is kind of ongoing and isn't really concluding. So what's kind of interesting is now with the election of Donald Trump as president, what will happen there? And I think that's the main point, since now we can see that the situation has been progressing fairly seriously against the Ukrainians, and the Biden administration has not authorized these missile strikes that they wanted for who knows what reason. What was the Russian? Well, it's hard to know here. I mean, the North Koreans themselves have not entered Ukraine proper as per the international boundaries, let alone the Russian claims. So. It's occurred to me that perhaps the entry of North Korean troops could be somewhat of a counterweight to the idea of these tactical missile strikes, which might not be all that effective anyhow. I think the other aspect may be we just have a limited supply of these missiles and don't want to give them away at this point. I mean, at some point we have to see what weapon systems we really need to conserve for our own purposes, and so that's up in the air. But now with Donald Trump on the scene, what kind of policies will he pursue? Well, if you like these videos, again, please give me a like, and you can subscribe and look for more subscriptions always. And you can click the bell for notifications on YouTube. And of course, you can also subscribe on Rumble if if you're not on YouTube but are on Rumble, or you know. So either way, so yeah, so that's kind of the situation as we see it now. Right now, we've seen he's picked his chief of staff, which was a campaign manager, lady, I guess the first woman to be chief of staff to a president, and kind of belying the idea that was put out in the campaign that he didn't like to work around strong, intelligent women. Huh? But actually, he had some serious people of that sort in the Trump organization proper, I believe, historically. But yeah, but we don't know how he's going to handle foreign affairs. Like, what is he really going to do about the Ukraine war now that he's going to be president in the next 2.5 months? So far, although he thought within one day he'd be entering a negotiation to end the war, so far, as I understand, he's not talked to Putin yet, and Putin has not talked to him. Not even the obligatory congratulations on your election. Nor I don't know. I think he did have a conversation with Zelensky, and presumably Musk was in on it too, because he provides the Starlink communication system, which is so vital to the Ukrainian operations. So we don't. Again, I'm not sure. I think that some of the people that I've sometimes follow on YouTube, like the whole crew around Judge Napolitano, who sometimes annoy me with their pervasive anti-Semitism, as I call it. Not all of them, but many of them. Colonel Schaefer, I would excuse from that comment particularly. I think that some of them who weren't really in that camp are getting worse about that, in my opinion. And their ongoing glee for the Russian whatever. I don't know it's going to be that simple, frankly. For one thing, there's a lot of U.S. commitment to this conflict. And, you know, it's kind of hard to back away from that from an international posture, given all your allies' involvement, all of our involvement, and the commitment. And, you know, and let's face it, the whole Democrat Party practically is going to support continuing Ukraine support, and a significant part of the Republican Party will. So the question is, how does he handle that? And also, I don't even know exactly what his mindset on the subject is. I mean, allegedly, he once threatened to nuke Moscow if Russia invaded Ukraine. Allegedly. He might have done it. I suspect that inwardly Putin kind of snickered a little bit because, I mean, as if. But, I mean, and then Russia would then nuke New York and Washington, probably in retaliation, right? Which would be kind of tit for tat. Because that's, of course, Washington is the national control area, and the business control area is basically New York. The two, Moscow and for Russia, is like the both together. Plus, when you look at the casualty levels, I mean, Russia has to target at least twice as many Americans as Russians would be killed in order to match the populations, calling proportional retaliation, right? I mean, I suspect that would be the approach they would take. Otherwise, they would be losing, right? Well, in a definition, of course, if we destroyed all of Russia and lost half our population, that wouldn't be exactly a win, I don't think. Even though Russia would be no more, and we'd still have half our population. So I don't think we'd want that to be the outcome. But if you see the point, I don't think that is real. But what the problem is, the international situation is not as placid as it was when Trump first came into office. You now have this so-called alliance of evil, if you want to call it that, the China and Russia together, along with Iran and North Korea. I mean, the thing has progressed in a bad direction a lot further than it was. I mean, at the time Trump was in office, North Korea had some very primitive single warheaded missiles, and that's all they had. And they weren't able to probably reach the United States yet. Now they're progressing to missiles that perhaps have the range to reach the United States, and they seem to be copying some of the Russian multiple warhead missiles. It looks like the non-proliferation thing has gotten a little bit further than we would want it there. Meanwhile, it's possible that Iran may or may not have conducted a couple of nuclear tests. The U.S. government has still not commented yay or nay on this subject. So it's in the rumor mill level. But if it's true, that's a different development for Israel in that Middle East situation. Um, and so, and also, I don't know. I mean, as it was at the time of, you know, um, his first term, Putin, I mean, excuse me, Trump was able to actually put the screws on Iran and simply dare everybody to say, do not buy oil from them or we will do something bad to you for that. But now, now that, that things have progressed in a certain way, will China really buckle under to that now? I mean, especially if Trump is threatening them with even more tariffs. We don't know. I mean, it looks to me like China has become more militant. Xi has consolidated power quite a bit more than he had at that time. You know, so and let's face it, even when we tried to talk North Korea out of their nuclear weapons, it didn't actually happen, as you recall, with all the pressure that Trump might want to put on. And Russia is now so utterly sanctioned that I don't know that there's any practical economic sanctions left that we can impose without actually hurting our own interests or our interests of our allies and protect. And the allies are more committed to the Ukraine conflict than we are, I think, at this stage, at least. So that I'm just rambling through this a little bit, but I'm trying to illustrate he's got a real problem diplomatically to figure out what to do. And Russia probably is not very willing to just give up everything they've taken. You know, one incentive has been discussed and would be relieving all these economic sanctions, but then Russia's done pretty good under the sanctions, actually. And in a lot of ways, it's helped Putin consolidate power because the oligarchs lost their yachts and a lot of their influence and their ability to operate in the West. And so their ability to do the things they were doing before and kind of robbing Russia and to live the high life in the West has kind of been knocked down a lot. And yet he's remained power behind it. So, like I said, these are the issues that I think that Trump has to face, and it'll be interesting to see who he picks for the key jobs of National Security Advisor, for Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense, and Director of National Intelligence, etc. This may give us a clue as to what direction he's going to take on this. Ideally, from my point of view, I'd like to see him negotiate an end to the war on some kind of equitable terms, but then Ukraine doesn't want to play, apparently. And of course, to force Ukraine to play, we would sort of be pulling the legs out from under them, so to speak, and that would not be very popular in certain quarters here. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles it. He's a smart guy. He managed to win a landslide, 325 electoral votes. I think that's a record for many years. I have to go back to, did Bush the first get that many? I'm not sure. But at any rate, maybe Clinton, the first term. I'll have to go into that. But the point I'm getting to is that for recent years, it's a good record, and he's done. It looks like he may actually end up getting a popular vote. We have to wait till California is completely counted yet. But he did a lot better than a lot of people, even than I expected. I thought he would win, but you still had that little nervousness there. Will it really happen? So anyway, but like I said, we'll see how he handles all these issues. But that's what I'm kind of looking for, these key appointments. To end this up, I will make another comment about the ongoing election. Right now, it looks as if, looks like we got the Pennsylvania, McCormick seat. It looks so. There may be a recount depending on what the final vote comes out. There's a bunch of votes left, and Casey doesn't seem to want to go willingly. It looks bad for Nevada. It looks like Rosen will get it, unfortunately, but it looks like it. Just looking at that, 97% of the votes are in, and he's behind by over 1% or so. I don't think so. That looks bad. Now, on the other hand, I'm not so sure about Arizona. I mean, it looks like Lake is catching up, and there's a bunch of votes left. So it's possible, depending on what areas haven't been counted, she might even pull even or pull ahead, maybe get within recount range or something, or maybe win. I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it. Odds are probably not so great, but we'll see. But it doesn't seem as impossible as it looked initially. So, and she's certainly out there begging for money. So I guess to help with watching polls or whatever. I don't know. Those states really take forever to count their votes. I mean, it's pathetic. They ought to get a better system out there. Anyway, well, I'll wrap this up for now. But that's just kind of the way I see it. We'll see whether we're heading to a major conflict in the world, or whether Trump really can stabilize things. But remember, there's going to be a lot of the momentum toward conflict is pretty strong, actually. So we got to watch that. Anyway, all for now. I'll be posting this on YouTube and Rumble as always, and the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. All for now.